Good day. My name is Russell Galt, and I work for ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability, the world's oldest and largest association of local governments working on sustainable development. So thank you everybody for joining us today. A spectacular turnout, no doubt owing to the interest that this cutting-edge topic of managing invasive alien species in urban contexts can induce. And also, of course, owing to the high profile of exciting speakers that we have with us today. So this is the second in a series of URBIS dialogues. URBIS dialogues are interactive discussions around cutting-edge issues relating to urban biodiversity management. But what is URBIS? URBIS is standing for the Urban Biosphere Initiative. Probably not all of you will be familiar with it yet, because it is very much a work in progress. URBIS comprises two parallel work streams, one of which is focusing on developing a designation process which seeks to recognize and reward cities that perform well in managing biodiversity. But the second is this interactive platform for discussions and the sharing of knowledge, ideas, lessons, and best practices. So it's a great pleasure to welcome today a number of eminent speakers, experts in this field and coming from local governments, international organizations, and academic institutions. And I'm sorry to say that my colleague Chantal Van Ham, who works for IUCN, is not with us yet, but she is having a couple of technical issues with her Mac computer, but hopefully she will be joining us very soon. So without further ado, I think I will hand over to the first of our speakers today. Yes, the first speaker is Piero Genovesi, who is the chair of IUCN Invasive Species Specialist Group. And Piero has a long-standing experience working in this field. He's advised governments, he's advised various organizations in helping to formulate policies to combat invasive alien species. So thank you for your participating today, Piero, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. Thank you.
And I hope you do see my screen. I don't, so I'm trying to. This is my first webinar, so thank you very much for inviting me to join this very interesting meeting. I think this is going to be extremely useful in the future because I see a list of really very relevant practitioners from all over the world, so I think this is really very interesting, this kind of approach. So I'll try to give you a brief overview on not only the impact of invasive alien species in urban areas, in cities, but also on the some of the mechanisms behind these growing threats to our lives. Okay. Oops. Gosh. Okay. So first of all, I think it is important to remind that cities of the world are a key hotspot of biological invasions. Many data show that the number of introduced species, many of which are harmful and invasive, is particularly high in a disturbed area like a town can be. And I report here a couple of graphs from two very relevant papers showing that nowadays, not only in Europe but in areas from all over the world, we see often that the number of introduced of alien plants, for example, is higher than the number of native plants, and also more importantly that new introductions or recent introductions are more frequent than old introductions. This means that even if we have cultivated for long plants from other regions of the world, the phenomenon is growing now at a very rapid pace, and as in all taxonomic group, we see a rapid growth of this problem. Just another example that I can see from my windows here in Rome, parakeets. Just to give you an idea, in Italy we have over 20 species of parakeets in our towns. 5 of them are already breeding. The number of colonies, of nests, is rapidly increasing. We see a decrease in native species, even if so far we have little evidences to prove that there is an impact on native species. But clearly this is a growing problem in many towns of the world. So what are the causes of the high number of invasive alien species that we have around in our cities? There are many causes. Of course, we plant a lot of species for ornamental purposes, and this is a key vector of planting introductions. It has been shown by several studies that horticulture is the main vector for introduction of invasive plants. The other point is that, of course, in our cities we hold a lot of pets, and there is an interest in increasing the number of pets that are traded around the world. People are curious. So this is another pathway of introduction of species. We also see something that probably in the next years is going to cause unexpected arrivals. So I don't know if you can recognize the use of butterflies in parties, or the increasing number of children that have stick bugs in their houses. So what happens is that the number of species that are imported and traded is increasing steadily. And finally, another point that I think it's important to keep in mind is that cities do provide a suitable habitat for many species. Just to give you an example, cities are usually warmer than the surrounding areas. So many species that couldn't make it in a cold environment outside cities can easily live within the borders of a town. And this can become a synergic effect if we think of the global warming of temperatures that could help these species to spread from cities outside. At the end, as it often happens with invasive species, the basic problem is the link with the economy. It has been shown that, for example, the number of exotic plants present in an area is correlated to the median family income. The richer we are, the more we import plants and animals for our for ornamental purposes. And this is an issue that the link with the economy is an issue that is behind many of the invasions around the world. And that's an area where, of course, cities play a key role. In fact, cities are often an entry point for new invasive species because often we have airports, harbors, stations within the borders of a city. And these are key entry points of new invasions. The data, the graph that I showed you in my slide relates to the pathways of invasion in the Baltic Sea in Northern Europe. As you can see, vessels and are the principal, the main vector of arrival of new species, and this often happens close to cities. Just to give you an idea, one of the very first studies on marine invasions was done in the San Francisco Bays in the 90s, and showed as the number of alien species in that bay was over 200. And there were many species for which it was very difficult, if not impossible, to identify the area of origin, so what they call cryptogenic species. So the number of introduction in the marine environment close to towns is really high. And the graph that you can see here shows something that all people working on invasions know very well. The number of invasions is increasing in all environments, in all taxonomic groups. I give you an example on a plant pest, the Asian longhorn beetle. This has arrived into Italy and to several other countries of Europe very often in towns, in cities, because it arrives very often through the movement of goods by air. So, for example, in Italy, it has been detected for the first time in a commercial nursery of bonsais close to the airport of Milan. So, of course, cities can help, can be in areas where invasive species tend to arrive first in a country. What are the impacts? We can see decrease of native species, including rare ones, because cities do host an important component of biodiversity. And the other point is that many cities around the world have important natural or semi-natural areas that can be severely impacted by invasive species. But I think it's also important to keep in mind that the impact that species can cause is not only on the biodiversity. I give you the example of the red palm weevil that is destroying all the palms of Rome, and this has a kind of a social effect because Romans are very linked to their palms. These are the palms that were used in the movie Ben-Hur in the 50s, and so the impact can be also on our perception of our surroundings. But invasive species can also cause huge impacts on our health, and that's of course much more serious in terms of our livelihood. We have increasing numbers of parasites, pathogens, allergenic agents like, for example, the Ambrosia artemisifolia that is causing huge costs to our health systems because it affects a large proportion of the European inhabitants. We have plants that can release toxins, and we have, of course, viruses that are spread by invasive species. For example, the outbreak of chikungunya fever that was brought to Italy by the tiger mosquito caused several casualties in the north of Italy in the last days. All these impacts, of course, have an economic cost. I give you the example of the ragweed, Ambrosia artemisifolia, that is expected to cost to Germany alone over 30 million euros per year in the future. The impact on the economy is, of course, an argument that is particularly relevant for decision makers. This estimate is not for cities, it is for the entire Europe, but many of these kinds of costs, like the costs of managing invasive species, the damage to infrastructure, the damage to human health, and so on, affect many of our cities and towns. For example, a recent report by the CAB International on the impact of invasive species on the economy of UK showed as many of the species, like the Japanese knotweed, have an economic impact on the infrastructures that cost huge losses to the country. And we know many other examples, the zebra mussel and other mollusks that can damage waterways, can cause impacts on water treatment, limiting the access to water in our cities, can affect power plants, reducing the production of energy, and of course we have the example of rats and other rodents that can cause huge economic losses, not only on infrastructure, but also again on our health system. Final point that is important to remind is that if invasive alien species tend to invade cities, they also tend to spread out of cities and expand to the neighboring areas. They can spread through the road network. Many plant species are facilitated in their movement by the road networks, by wind, or through rivers and canals that often pass through our cities. A couple of examples. This is quite an alarming new arrival for Europe. It has been here for less than 10 years. It is the Asian yellow-legged hornet, Vespa velutina. It was spotted for the first time close to Bordeaux in France, and after that it started expanding, and it has reached Italy a couple of months ago. It is a predator of pollinators, so the impact of the species is mostly on agriculture and the natural phytocyanosis. And this is an animal that probably many of you know. It is the gray squirrel, the American gray squirrel. It can cause huge impacts on our environments. In Italy, we have an expanding population, but it's important to remind that all the populations of gray squirrels in Italy started in cities. They were brought by private people as pets, and from there they started expanding. So the forecasted expansion of this invasive species to the rest of Italy and probably to the rest of Europe will be quite fast in the next decades, but everything started from cities. So I think it is important to see the different roles that cities can play in the patterns of biological invasions. I hope this brief overview was of interest to you all. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Piero, for that interesting and succinct overview of invasive alien species in cities. Now we know why cities are particularly important in the battle to manage invasive alien species. You provided us with some insights as to the sources, pathways, and indeed the adverse economic and social impacts of invasives in cities. And you highlighted, or you illustrated that with a series of examples. So I think many of us will recognize those iconic invasives because they're so pervasive. So I was very naughty earlier, and I did not provide Moisa, who was our lady behind the scenes undertaking the logistical and technical work to enable this webinar to take place. I did not enable her to give an intervention and instruct everybody, all the participants and speakers alike, on how to operate the system. So, Moisa, would you like to give a very quick overview of how to operate the systems so that people are aware of how to pose questions in the panel or by voicing them directly?
Sure, Russell. Thanks. Yes, so just very briefly, just to let you know, you probably realize by now, everyone is muted by default. We do that to ensure the sound quality. But however, you can, of course, interact with the speakers. So we will have discussion time after all the presentations. And at that time, if you would like to speak, just press this little hand icon. I hope you can all see it. And we will then unmute you and give you the floor. Or alternately, if you prefer, you can just type in your question. I think you can all see the question pane. So just type in your question, and then the speakers will answer it after the presentations. And if you have any technical issues, just type them in, and I will help you. Thanks.
Just another point, I was also very naughty, and I did not mention that the IUCN is organizing, in collaboration, I think, with a number of European governments, a conference on the 5th of September addressing the issue of invasive alien species in cities. And it is targeting local government officials from across Europe. And part of one of the aims of that conference is to prepare local governments for some pending EU legislation which will seek to tackle invasives. And that takes place, as I said, on the 5th of September in the city of Gland in Switzerland, where IUCN is headquartered. And now I must apologize, I don't have all the details. I wasn't expecting to facilitate today. My colleague Chantal Van Ham from IUCN unfortunately was not able to because she has some technical difficulties with her Mac, but she will hopefully, as I said, join us soon and be able to give some more details on that. However, for now, following Piero's excellent presentation, it's my pleasure to hand over to Louise Stafford. Louise works for the city of Cape Town, which many of you will have had the pleasure to visit or at least have heard of. Cape Town's a magnificent city. It's located in a biodiversity hotspot, and so the challenges here to manage invasives are as pertinent as anywhere. So Louise is every day experiencing challenges to manage invasives in and around the city. and I think she's able to share with us some very interesting approaches to addressing the issue here in Cape Town. So over to you, Louise, and thank you so much for joining us. Hello, Moisa? Or are you able to transfer to Louise now, please?
Louise, perhaps you muted yourself. Can you maybe unmute yourself so we can hear you? Hello, Louise, are you there? I see that you're still muted.
Okay. Well, if Louise is continuing to have some tech... I can hear someone in the distance, in the background, but perhaps if Louise is struggling to connect, we could move on to the third scheduled speaker, if you agree with that. Mr. Vidar Arvelo, who is the municipal ecologist in the Department of Strategic Planning in the city of Helsingborg. Helsingborg, of course, is in Sweden, in South Sweden, and I'm pleased to say that Helsingborg is also a member of ICLEI's Local Action for Biodiversity Initiative, which we run in partnership with the IUCN. So, Vidar, without further ado, over to you. I'm sorry to jump you to the front of the queue, but this will allow Louise, hopefully, to sort out any technical issues that she's encountering. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. And thanks a lot for this invitation. Okay, I start right away, and I just wonder, have I 10 minutes for this presentation? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Thanks.
Vidar, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you. So
okay.
You have 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. This is just a short introduction about Helsingborg. You can see Helsingborg, the harbor here, and we have 130,000 inhabitants in Helsingborg. And I work at the Office of City Planning. And here's the location. In the south of Sweden, just opposite Denmark, we just have 4 kilometers between Helsingborg and Helsingør in Denmark. And the region of Helsingborg municipality is just 345 square kilometers, as you can see in this part, if you can see my arrow here. Yes. And we are just soon we will be ready with our city biodiversity report. And shortly our main habitats are marine, broadleaf forests, meadows, grasslands for grazing, streams. We have no lakes but a lot of small ponds and wetlands, and we have sandy beaches. And we have 250 recorded red data list species, and of them 125 are endangered. We make our own municipal nature reserves. We have done 6 by ourselves, and the state, the regional county board has made the rest. So we have 16 nature reserves. And the political aim is to create 1 new reserve per year. You can just see some information about this here. And we do a lot of work about protection biodiversity areas and management of the green spaces, recreation aspects. We try to improve some areas, and we try to connect them by creating some green space between them. And we have this balancing principle: if we are building on green areas, we shall create new ones. And a lot of information for the public. And just short information about this European initiative supported by the European Union. It's the DAISY project, and you can see here what DAISY stands for. and they have shown a list of the 100 worst invasive alien species in Europe. And there's another homepage for North Europe about invasive alien species as well. And to speak about Helsingborg, I have some examples of invasive alien species, and most of them are at the list published by the DAISY project, finished in 2008. And of those 100 worst invasive species in Europe, we can find at least 20 in Helsingborg. And in Sweden as a whole, we have 40 of the 100 worst species. Well, this is just a list, and I will come back to these species later. So if we start with the invasive alien plants, we can find this Heracleon mantegazzianum coming from Asia and introduced as a park or a garden plant. It can be 2 meters high, and it spreads very effectively along rivers. And we have to fight them because if you get the liquid from the plant on the skin and you get sunshine on it, you can get severe big, what do you call it, exanthems, or what do you say? And then we have this this tree, broadleaf tree, Aesop pseudoplatanus. It's not on this 100 list because in Central Europe this is a native tree, but not in Sweden. It was introduced in the 1700s and as a park tree, but it has a very, very strong capacity of spreading. And then we have this rose, very beautiful, smells very good, and Rosa rugosa comes also from Asia, introduced as a park bush. And when it comes to the beaches, it invades them. It has a very strong vegetative possibility to spread. So those these plants you can see here on, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Yeah. Okay. All these plants we fight and try to get rid of, but we cannot completely get rid of them completely, but we can reduce them rather good. And then we have some mammals, invasive and alien. We have the brown rat. It was introduced in the 1500s. It came by sailing ships. And before that we had the black rat, and both of them comes from Asia originally. But the brown rat is stronger, so it depletes the black rat. It was really regarded as a native species, since it has been here much longer than the brown rat. But the black rat is now gone in Sweden. And then we have this mink, the Mustelavissen, introduced in 1920 in fur farms, and some animals escaped and have established big populations, and you can find it everywhere along the coast and rivers and lakes. And it harms nesting birds, etc. You can hunt them, but they come back, and so we cannot stop the mink nor the rat either. And then we have this European rabbit, also introduced as a pet or a hunting species, but you can find it everywhere. I have them in my own garden actually. And then we have some other animals here. We have this Arion vulgaris, the killer slackhole from Spain, and actually it was found for the first time outside Helsingborg in a garden plant shop in 1975. And now this slug has spreading all along the south of Sweden, so it's a big problem in gardens, and some garden owners can kill several hundreds each season, some even thousands. And it eats all types of crops. And then we have this bird introduced in 1935 for hunting, and it's Branta canadensis, and it's also very widespread, and you can find it everywhere in the south of Sweden. And then in the sea, the marine environment, we have rather severe problems with invasive alien species that have been discovered the last 2 decades. For instance, this American comb jelly, who and it is what do you say? It competes with other species about food resources, and it can change the fish fauna indirectly. And then we have this wireweed spreading along the coast. It can outcompete the native algae. And then this red-gilled mudworm was first found in Öresund some 10 years ago, and it also changes the ecology on the seafloor. And we have no methods to fight these species. And there are some other small species as well in the sea. Then we have this crayfish introduced for what you say, farming. You put them in small lakes since we eat these crayfish just as they do in Louisiana. Not many countries in the world eat this crayfish, but it's a very big festivity in August in Sweden about crayfish. And this North American crayfish carries a disease, a fungal disease that kills the native crayfish. So it's almost gone, the native species. And then we have this plant in rivers and streams, the Alodia canadensis, and you can find it almost everywhere. So these species are very hard to fight. And then in the sea, there are other species, as I mentioned before. We have this toxic diatom. This is not what you see in the picture, because the picture shows green algae, but when the sea is blooming of algae, this toxic diatom called Carcinodiscus is said to dominate the algae blooming. And you can also find the poisonous cyanobacteria when these occasions appear. And then we have some new fungal diseases on trees. Most spectacular is this elm tree disease that started some decades ago, and it has almost killed all elm trees in the south of Sweden. Especially when the elm trees are in groups. If you have an elm tree that stands solitary, it can perhaps survive. But this disease is spread by small beetles that lives in the tree normally. That's all from Helsingborg, Sweden. Thank you.
I appreciate your comment that that there is no method to fight them. That's a harrowing thought, and it underscores the importance of prevention, of preventative action. I wonder now if Louise is ready to speak, if your microphone has been sorted out, Louise, I would like to hand over to you now to share some insights from the city of Cape Town.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Great, great. We don't have your screen yet, so I think you have to accept the... Yes, great. Okay.
We're trying to get the screen on.
Martha, if you were there, please could you inform Louise how to activate the screen?
Okay, the screen share is on.
Yes, we can see the screen now, so if you open the presentation, I think we can get underway. And Louise, you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
I can see his phone screen. Yes.
Yes, but there's no presentation on it. It's just, oh, here we are. Great, great.
Just a delay.
Now we see it. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. At last I'm with you. I'm going to tell you about invasive species management in the city of Cape Town. The presentation is just the overview of what I'm going to show you, the background. There's some of the challenges that we're facing and what the city is doing to address those challenges. First of all, the picture that you see in front of you is just the one with the map is showing the different catchments in the city of Cape Town. There are 20 catchments, and we're not only addressing invasive plants, but it's a suite of species, emerging, existing invasive animals, and Cape Town is regarded one of the world's mega disaster areas, and the reason for that is that the city is found in the heart of the Cape Floristic region. The Cape Floristic region is the Cape Floral Kingdom is the smallest of 6 of the world's floral kingdoms, and it's the most diverse. Table Mountain National Park is found in the boundaries of the city of Cape Town, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Table Mountain is one of the world's 7 natural wonders, and it supports a species richness of 2,500 indigenous plant species, of which 190 are endemic. And we also have 5 globally extinct species that already went extinct in the wild, and there are 27 amphibian species in the city, of which 2 are endemic. So there is no doubt that the city's unique biodiversity is under threat, and something has to be done. And the 2 main threats are development, urban sprawl. This picture is a picture of the Cape Flats, where one of the most threatened vegetation types, Cape Flats fynbos, exist, and it shows you how urban sprawl impacts on natural vegetation. And then, of course, alien plant invasions are recognized globally as one of it's the second biggest threat to biodiversity, and in Cape Town it's no different. And unfortunately, pollution, because of urban dense urban populations, Cape Town is quite a large informal settlement, and pollution is unfortunately one of the main challenges we're facing, and that also affects our waterways. I'm going to now talk to you about the challenges we're facing, and the first one is the human dimensions, the pictures that you saw, the pollution, and then the expectations. There are 3.5 million residents in Cape Town, and there are 3.5 million expectations. Everybody feels they have an opinion on how invasives should be managed or should not be managed, and also what threatens people affect the way that they respond to what they expect, influence their expectations. Some of the big problems that people face, and that's not always related to biodiversity, is the vagrant and illegal activities, where invasive plants provide shelter for vagrants from where they can do all sorts of illegal activities, threatening the safety of people. And these things are not necessarily related to how we would, under normal circumstances, prioritize where we will clear or where we will do our invasive plant control. But if you face areas where people, residents are really worried about their safety, it influences priorities. And then in the Fynbos region is a fire-driven system, and many of the plants that invade the Fynbos region are Australian acacias. They also fire-driven species, and the fear for runaway wildfires in Cape Town is a reality. In 2070, houses burned down in Cape Town, and it caused a lot of economic loss. And then also because of many people living in areas abutting invaded land, that's not necessarily of high biodiversity value, these people expect the city to respond to those invaded areas in fear of fire. This is a picture of one of the areas that was affected in during the 2000 fires, and in the background, in foreground, you can see the houses. In the background, there's a fire belt, and then where we dense invaded area, where there's an area that's densely invaded, and that's the fear that if a fire goes in that area, it's very difficult to stop, and people put pressure on the city to control, even though it's not part of our necessarily a biodiversity priority. This next slide shows you some more challenges, so there are two more that I want to talk about. The one is land ownership and land management. There are different departments, there are 9 different departments in the city of Cape Town managing different areas of different pieces of land, and only one of the 9 different departments has the mandate to control invasive plants. The other have other priorities, such as health or housing. So, of course, their focus won't be invasive plant management. So once we do an initial clearing and they don't see the invasive plants, their priorities change immediately. And we all know that we need to get back to areas to continuously control it, otherwise you lose your investment. So they have also other ideas about managing invasives and where priorities lie. It's sometimes difficult to collaborate, and especially with private landowners, there are different land managers, land ownerships, national government, provincial and local government, and to get everybody to collaborate and the willingness to control invasive plants on their land is a challenge. And then resources. Invasive plants and invasive species in general compete with other resource priorities such as housing, providing health, providing services to poor communities. So if you come and you put invasive plant control on the table to get budget for it, it's uncertain. So we always manage within a very uncertain budgetary environment. So what does the city do to address these challenges? The city established an invasive species unit in 2008, and the main focus of this unit is to facilitate collaboration and to coordinate control amongst the amongst the 9 departments and with the private landowners and national and provincial landowners, with the view of prioritizing and looking at what I've shown you in the previous slides, fire, vagrants, and then also the biodiversity concerns, to take everything into the prioritization and find a win-win situation. One of the projects we have is a terrestrial control project. It's the national government has an expanded public works program with it's a job creation program, and we use labor-intensive methods. There's a project in memory of the late Professor Kader Asmal. He was the Minister of he was the Minister of Water Affairs in President Nelson Mandela's government, and he passed away in 2011. So the Mayor of Cape Town has a program to commemorate his life and the contribution he made, and this project has been running now for a year, and we managed to create 6,500 job opportunities through this program. There's one of the teams removing water hyacinth in a river, so aquatic weed control is very much part of what the programs are about. We also have invasive animal management. There are 3 invasive animals that's been prioritized for control in Cape Town. The guttural toad is a species indigenous to South Africa, but it's invasive in Cape Town. Then the Indian house crow is one of the world's 100 worst invader animal species. We had a population of 10,000 house crows in 2008. We reduced the population. We believe that there are less than 2,000 birds, but it's still a big problem. And then mallard ducks. The approach that we follow is a catchment approach. Invasive species do not respect boundaries. Therefore, we cannot manage it within institutional boundaries. So we follow a catchment approach. It's an interdepartmental project. We rely a lot on the knowledge management, making sure we have good data in place, systems and standards according to which we manage. And then planning, prioritization, coordination is key to successful control. We integrate our work, we integrate planning and planning amongst departments and land managers to find better collaboration and a better landscape approach, and then also integrate the methods. We monitor, evaluate and report. I have a research, we just recently established partnerships with the Center for Invasion Biology in Stellenbosch University and the Rhodes University to help us to bridge the gap between research and management. And we adapt our management approach as we go. The concept of integrated control is prevention. Prevention is a national government function, so the only way that at local government where you can play a role in prevention is to work with industry partnerships such as the nursery industry to make the public aware of potentially invasive species to prevent them from coming in. Once a species is already in the country, early detection and eradication is the second line of defense. If that's passed, if a species or become established, then mechanical and chemical control comes into play. But it's essential, your long-term, medium to long-term, to follow up and rehabilitate, and then of course to have biological control as part of your control programs, and that's a long-term. But it's the most cost-effective part of integrated control. These pictures just show you of the different methods that we're using to control invasive plants, integration of manual, chemical, mechanical and biological control, and then fire. Using fire as a management tool in an urban area is a challenge. We had a few successes and we finally managed to convince other departments, and mainly the safety and security department, that if the work preparation for stack burning and using fire as a tool is done properly, then it can be a successful even in an urban environment. This is just an example where we prepared a site. This was the very first site that we managed to get permission to burn. We executed the controlled burn, and it was highly successful. One of the main aquatic weeds in the city is water hyacinth, and although we use manual and mechanical control extensively, we have one site where we're piloting biological control because there are no evidence that biological control on water hyacinth is successful and effective, and we have one project, and we hope to we started the project in November 2012, and we hope to show that biological control on water hyacinth is effective also in Cape Town. This is the site where we have the biocontrol, and this picture here shows you the damage caused by the biocontrol agents. And we are very happy with our monitoring results that show that the agents have dispersed. But the challenge lies in convincing the communities and the other departments that even though it's a long-term process, it needs to be, it is effective and we could use it. And then we managing species, we call it species jumping the garden fence. This picture is a classic picture where it shows you wild fennel. That was it's at the house in one of the neighborhoods, Constantia, and where you see the wild fennel that's in public open space, that species come from that property. And we have, to manage those species, there are 15 target species on our early detection priority list, and most of those species are in private gardens, so we need to mobilize the citizens of Cape Town, get them involved and get them to join our spotter network. We've got a spotter network, it's an online network where we encourage people to sign up as spotters and to report the species online, and that allows the early detection teams to follow that up and to control those plants in the areas. And then partnerships, as I mentioned earlier, with industry is key in managing invasive species, especially those species that potentially can jump the garden fence. And awareness and education, I believe, is one of the most underrated tools we have to manage invasives in an urban and any other environment. It's essential to ask ourselves and make sure that we know how to communicate the message of invasive species. We need to know and understand our target audiences. We need to select the appropriate media and essentially capture hearts and minds. And without that, we will never be able to influence behavior. The media we regard as a powerful partner, and send a message out in a positive way, and this is one of the posters that we designed to address the aquatic weed problem, but we put a positive spin on it, save our waters, and that is the message that we're sending out, that aquatic weeds is a symptom of poor water quality, and we need to save our waters and manage invasives. That was my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Louise, for that fascinating presentation. It's a remarkable set of challenges that you have to deal with there in Cape Town, but it seems like you're coping remarkably well. And what's very clear is that invasive alien species is clearly a cross-cutting issue in cities, and it requires engagement with landowners, different departments, and especially communities. So I think that certainly resonates. Our next speaker is Debbie Sharp, who works for the South African Department of Environmental Affairs in the Natural Resources Management Programs. And she has in particular played a leading role in the Working for Water program, which was launched as early as 1995, and is spearheading South Africa's national efforts to address invasive alien species. And Working for Water actually engages with both different departments of governments as well as local communities. So Debbie, thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Hello?
Yes, Debbie, we can hear you.
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Hi. I'm going to just give you a brief, hopefully brief, overview of the Working for Water program and National Resource Management programs. Working for Water is one of the natural resource management programs that is managed through the Department of Environmental Affairs. The Working for Water program, working on fire, working for wetlands, working for forests, working for energy, value-added industries, working for land, and the Invasive Alien Species program are all the programs that are governed by the Department of Environmental Affairs that look at all the invasives in the country. The natural resource management programs are part of South Africa's government's expanded public works program, as Louise said, but on a national scale, and address developmental needs in labor-intensive ways, using local communities to do labor-intensive work to clear invasive alien species. The biggest program
Debbie, I think you're muted.
Muted.
all right. Someone keeps muting me. Okay, so the Working for Water program is the largest of the natural resource management programs. It's currently being managed by the Department of Environmental Affairs.
Debbie, sorry
My
to
slides
disturb.
don't want to go.
I think your screen is stuck. Can you maybe stop sharing your screen and then share again?
Okay. How do I click on that?
Yes, and then share again.
Okay. Okay. And then share again. Okay. Okay, I think my screen's still stuck. Let me try that again. Okay, my screen is stuck.
If you prefer, I can also share your screen. If you send me the presentation, I can show the presentation. But then maybe we can switch to another speaker and we do that in between.
Okay.
Would that be better?
Yes, that would be a little better. Let me just try and sort this out quickly.
Okay, great.
All right, thanks.
Okay, okay. So in that case, apologies to everybody for these technical difficulties. The next speaker I have the pleasure of introducing, whilst Debbie sorts out her screen, is Joe Caffrey, who is a senior researcher, or senior research officer rather, from Inland Fisheries Ireland. And Joe, thank you for joining us today. I understand you're going to share some experience in the practical management of invasive alien species in Dublin through collaborative engagement. So I'm sorry to bring you to the front of the queue without warning, but if you're ready to present, we would be delighted to hear from you.
Thank you very much. I don't have a screen available to me.
Moisa, please could you transfer the screen to Joe? Yes, I think, Joe, we can see your screen, although it seems like you haven't... yes, we can see your screen, so if you just open the presentation on your own laptop, I think that should work.
Okay, let me get there. Unfortunately, I'm going to there again. Can you see it now? Can you see my presentation?
We can
I can see your file, or your folder rather. Maybe there's a slight time lag, but we can certainly see your screen.
Right. But open on my screen as we speak.
Yes, now we can see it. We can see it clearly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So you have 10 minutes. Thanks, Joe.
Hopefully. Okay, hopefully. This is my first time also. Hopefully we will have no more technological hitches. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to address the webinar. In this short presentation, what I would hope to focus on are the methods that have been developed by my organisation, Inland Fisheries Ireland, mostly in collaboration with other organisations and with other stakeholder groups to mitigate the adverse effects of invasive species. I'm not going to talk about the adverse effects because Piero and some of the other speakers have done that. So I'm going to move swiftly on with methods because I feel that they are really very, very important, centrally important. Ireland, as many of you will know, is a small country on the western edge of Europe. Dublin is the capital city. It's located about midway along the eastern seaboard. And Dublin is a relatively small city, an area of about 115 square kilometres and a population in the region of 1.25 million. Moving swiftly along to the nub of the problem. I suppose the question is, in an urban city like Ireland at the edge of Europe, do we have invasive species problems? Answer, yes. But I would think that the problems are not as earth-shattering as they are in other cities, such as we've heard for the likes of Cape Town. We do have problems, however, and these do affect our biodiversity, the environment. They affect recreational immunity, the economy, and even human health. Among the most problematic of our invasive species are probably the riparian species, particularly when these encroach into the urban environment from the river or canal bank. So my main focus today is going to be on aquatic and these riparian invasive species. Most problematic among these are species that would be well known throughout Europe and I think the rest of the world. We have the knotweed species, we've giant hogweed, which we've already heard about, Himalayan balsam, which is spreading rapidly through Ireland. We have others that we might refer to as less problematic problems in a localized area such as urban Dublin, but they do cause major problems elsewhere in Ireland and certainly elsewhere in the world. I've just listed 3 of those here. And the situations or habitats that we'll be looking at in urban Dublin include rivers, canals, and the adjacent riparian areas, also lakes and rivers. Just to have a look at some of the species, the Japanese knotweed rampaging through Europe, but certainly rampaging through Ireland at the moment. And here you can see a disused house in Dublin that's actually under siege. Looking out the front door, you see the Japanese knotweed trying to get in, a particularly hazardous plant, a dangerous plant. Another plant that we heard a little bit about, I think it was Louise was talking about the giant hogweed. This is a dangerous plant also. This is a hazardous plant. Here we see giant hogweed in the front garden of a house. It has hopped the wall from the River Tolka, one of the rivers that traverses Dublin City. Here we see it emerging from the riverbank onto the roadside where it could cause harm to walkers. And here we see it on a walkway coming up through a seat. Considering the burns that giant hogweed can inflict, I think you could reliably refer to this as a hot seat, perhaps not one you want to sit on. Himalayan balsam is another species, a very, very pretty plant that unfortunately is intentionally spread because bees really like it, and also it's quite pretty. But where it gets into river habitats like this, it will cause serious damage. And one of the aquatic species is the curly-leaved waterweed, or Lagerosyphon, and here we see it in one of our urban fisheries. It was introduced as an oxygenating weed and has laid waste to that fishery, unfortunately. We have other examples, but we simply don't have time for them. Where we're mitigating against the detrimental effects of these species in Dublin, Inland Fisheries Ireland has adopted a three-strand approach. First and foremost probably is the development of practical control methods, because while I've heard in some of the other speeches or presentations that methods simply are not available, I believe, and we believe in IFI, that you do have to go after methods. You've got to find solutions and create best practice guides. Certainly it can be difficult, but I think you just have to continue and go after it. Public awareness and stakeholder or community engagement is likewise vitally important, because we need the assistance of stakeholders and community. And then the whole area of biosecurity, I'll say something very brief about that. We're very lucky in Inland Fisheries Ireland that we have a significant number of collaborating bodies and agencies, not just in Dublin, but throughout the country, and a lot of an expertise gained out there in the battle against our species within the urban city. Developing best practice for control, I think it would be fair to say, and it would be acknowledged by many organisations in the country, that Inland Fisheries Ireland is really leading in the development of practical control methods for our aquatic species. IFI conducts scientific research, often in collaboration with third-level institutes, that targets specific aquatic species problems. Again, I don't have time to go through them all, but I'll go through just a very few. Looking at one of the riparian species, it would be fair to say that Fingal County Council and Dublin County Council are leading the way in the development of the Tolka Valley, which is a very picturesque and very functional development. And they have launched a giant hogweed management program. Giant hogweed did control this area and made it a very hazardous area to walk, to fish. So they have implemented a program that's based on research conducted by IFI in other river catchments in Ireland. This work commenced in 2007 and has been highly successful so far, in that they have managed the problem and brought it down to really very manageable proportions. This was the type of picture you would see in many areas of the River Tolka, where large stands of giant hogweed were alongside rivers and also alongside the banks, posing serious problems for walkers, for fishermen and others. But through the use of the controlled use of glyphosate, this problem was brought under control. Research into the life cycles of plants to establish weak links is something else we do. And I think we all acknowledge that all invasive species do have weak links. But one, the Himalayan balsam, probably represents a very special and an unusual case among invasive species because it has many weak links. It's an annual plant, it has shallow roots, it doesn't have defensive thorns, it has short-leaved seeds, and all of this basically means that it can be controlled very effectively by pulling, or something that has become known as balsam bashing, very successfully used in England and now expanding in its popularity in Ireland. But because balsam is very labour intensive, we really do have to involve the community. So it affords opportunities to bring in the communities, and there are education and engagement opportunities associated. With that in mind, IFI has produced best practice guides, not only for this but for other plants, and has organised quite a number of balsam bashes. These have been singularly successful. If we look at a before picture alongside one of our rivers, and 1 year later, following a volunteer-run balsam bash, you can see the level of success that you can achieve. It's also great fun to get the kids involved, get the stakeholders involved, and achieve something very positive. Moving quickly on to the aquatic species, we have a number of aquatic species problems, and we address them in different ways. Two I want to share with you. One is through the use of cutting methods, or V-blades. Traditional weed control, traditional weed cutting boats can only apply a very shallow cut, and this often accentuates the weed problem rather than addressing it. The use of V-blades, which you see here, dragged along the bottom on a chain, applies a very deep cut, an effective cut, and this gives longer-term control. This is now a standard weed method used in the city's canals and throughout Irish waterways. Another method that is receiving great attention at the moment is light exclusion using jute matting. Jute matting, this method has been trialled in one of our lakes in the west. The jute, it's an open reef fabric, jute, hessian, or burlap as it's known as in the States. It biodegrades totally, which means it doesn't have to be removed as black plastic might. It's highly effective against the curly-leaved waterweed or lagarosiphon, but also against a range of other invasive species. And what's fascinating about this method is not only does it kill the invasive species, it permits the recolonization of native species that are permitted to grow through the pores. This is now widely used throughout Ireland, but also outside Ireland. This method has been adopted in one of our city fisheries that was overgrown by this lagarosiphon, or the curly-leaved waterweed. And this was very much a collaborative effort where a large number of community groups were brought together, but also the city council and the various wings of the fisheries. They did a job, laid the jute, covered this whole pond, and basically have reinstated the fishery. We heard about public awareness and stakeholder engagement, and I think we'd have to agree that it is central to any success that will be achieved in the battle against invasive species. Major initiatives here are to create awareness, but also to induce engagement. So the methods used are information, and we have provided an awful lot of materials on communication methods. Also to create easy reporting methods, and towards that end IFI has produced an invasive species app for smartphones, and it has a live emergency 24/7 number. In addition, we feel it's very important to engage with the stakeholders, so a lot of time is spent at training and demonstrations. And then the area of biosecurity, just one more slide on this. This is terribly important. The main focus here is on the stakeholder. The message we're striving to embed with the stakeholder here is that biosecurity must become instinctive and integral part of one's water-based activity. Fisheries can't always be there holding people's hand. It must become instinctive. In 2010, IFI rolled out mobile disinfection procedures for anglers using Faircan Aquatic. This was reasonably slow to take, but within a short while, some of the major groups of anglers became involved, and now disinfection is compulsory at many angling have been further developed and refined since. In addition, angler disinfection kits have been produced for anglers. This is particularly the individual angler who may go off along the bank on his own. And interestingly, this is the first of its kind. We weren't able to find them on the website anywhere. And another development is the permanent disinfection station, only launched in 2013 with us now by our minister. And these are gaining great purchase and are spreading awareness among the angler. Ultimately, what we want is a happy angler who is more than happy to disinfect prior to involving himself in his activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. That was fascinating. And certainly next time I'm in Dublin, I'll be very wary of those blister-inducing hot seats. They sound horrendous. I understand that my dear friend and colleague Chantal Van Ham from IUCN Regional Office for Europe, which is based in Brussels, is with us now and has in fact been for the last few presentations. So Chantal, I think if you're able to speak already, I will hand over to you to facilitate the rest of the webinar. And I would suggest that you introduced, yes, I would suggest that you introduce Sarah Brunel next, because apparently Moisa, who is liaising with Debbie Sharp to sort out her presentation, has not yet been able to remedy that. So I would kindly introduce or kindly welcome Chantal to take over. Thank you, Chantal.
Thank you very much, Russell, and yeah, my apologies to you all that I joined in so late, but I've been listening with great interest to the previous presentations, and yeah, maybe just very shortly a bit more on the background of this meeting. ICN is organizing a conference in September on this particular topic, and we're very pleased to see the interest of all of you today, participants, to hear more about your success stories, but also concerns and obstacles that you face in dealing with invasive alien species at the urban level. And we really hope that today's session will help to contribute to more dialogue and exchange of knowledge and best practices. And yes, we all welcome as well your contributions to our conference, and you're most welcome to join for that, but maybe we can come back to that later. So to continue with the next speaker, I would like to introduce to you Ms. Sarah Brunel, who indeed is working with the European Plant Protection European and Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization, which provides recommendations on plant health to its 50-member countries. Within the organization, Ms. Sarah Brunel is in charge of invasive alien plants and also pest risk analysis, environmental issues and modeling. And she works as an expert for the ICN Species Survival Commission, the European and Food Safety Authority, the European Environment Agency, and the Berne Convention. And this afternoon she will tell us more about the importance of public awareness on invasive alien species, and also about her work within the European and Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization. So please, Sarah, the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you for this invitation. So when you asked me to talk, I was wondering what to present, so I catch this opportunity to say a few words about EPO activities and all the information that participants to this webinar can find on our website, which may be useful to them. And I will then introduce our future activities on communication on invasive alien species. So first of all, EPO is an international organization. So you see all these countries in green are our member countries. This means this is a very huge area. There are 50 member countries, so 27 European ones and 23, 27 parts of the European Union and 23 additional ones, which are Mediterranean and Russian-speaking countries. We are based in Paris and we are bilingual in English and French. And we work in the field of plant protection, which is a plant health sector, which has always traditionally been based within national plant protection organizations, which are, well, usually ministries of agriculture, but the concepts of agriculture, environment are more and more being merged, and we are looking for more and more synergies and sharing of expertise and information and well, everything with both sectors. And it's now 10 years that we are having dedicated activities and a dedicated panel on invasive alien plants. It's a very well developed activity within EPO, as we have something like 20 panel members which attend our yearly panel meeting. And this is in the framework of this meeting that we develop our strategic plan and activities, and that we review all our documents. And our objectives are to, well, in a nutshell, to collect data, to exchange this data, and to draft some documents such as data sheets on plants and pest risk analysis on plants. One way which is very easily accessible to all people listening to this talk is one easy way to share information, to find information on invasive alien species, including plants. And when I say species, we are talking about, well, noxious pests, or pests, meaning insects, bacteria, fungi, and we are also dealing with plants, but we are not dealing with mammals. So what people can do is to register for free to the EPO reporting service. This consists of providing very short summaries of all the information we gather by browsing different pieces of literature, and you may find some data on new outbreaks of pests in Europe or out of Europe, pathways of introduction, biology, management, methods on some species, and this is all freely available. And we also collect information from our experts to share this information into the reporting service, meaning that people listening to this talk may also send me their publication and I may promote them into the reporting service. One of our main activity is to build lists of invasive alien species. Indeed, many people before have been mentioning the species on which they focus their attention in their management actions. This is an important activity to target the right invasive species, to know where you will devote some resources and efforts. So our aim is to select these species that are still emerging ones, meaning that you can still act on them, you can still eradicate them or manage them efficiently. So we have species that are recommended for regulation. So EPO only provides recommendations to its member country. We are not a regulatory body. This would then be the responsibility of either the European Union or member countries to implement a regulation in their own countries. And we provide this recommendation on species on the basis of pest risk analysis. Means that we have a very thorough and accurate documentation on each species to be able to say that this species would deserve recommendation, regulation. That if a country would like to regulate Solanum elagnifolium, for instance, we have provided all the background information to do so, so their decision would not be challenged by other traders or other countries. So we have a few species on this list that requires a lot of information to be able to include a species on this list. This is why we have another list which is broader, including additional invasive plants which have a more widespread distribution in the region and on which we attract our member countries' attention. All this listing is done in a very structured way through a prioritization process that we have been developed over the years. This has recently been published as an eco standard. It's freely available on our website, and this is aimed first to produce reference lists of invasive alien plants on the basis of very clear and transparent criteria, and then among these listed species to determine the one that deserve a pest risk analysis, meaning that they will be the most relevant one for regulation. And these methods can be applied at any scale. We use it at the eco scale, meaning 50 member countries, but this may also be used at the scale of one country or one city, for instance. We have tried to approach the problem on many fronts. So we not only base our strategy on regulation, as it's requiring a lot of time and effort, and so far, for instance, within the European Union there is no legislation. So considering that something like 80% of invasive alien plants are introduced through horticulture, we consider that it's very important to talk with the profession, the importers, producers. No.
Hello, Sarah, are you with us?
Sarah, can you hear us? Hello, Sarah?
It seems that she's having troubles with her computer.
So, shall we wait just one moment to see if we can reconnect with Sarah?
Hi Chantal, this is Russell here. I would suggest maybe just waiting a little while indeed, and then maybe in a minute or so, if she still isn't able, we can move on, or perhaps even revert back to Debbie Sharp in case she's able to join us already. And then I think there's only one more presentation, and that is yourself afterwards.
Sounds good. Yeah, I guess we can then maybe try to start with the presentation of Debbie Sharp, and then go back to Sarah as soon as she can connect with us again. Debbie, is the system working now for you?
I hope so.
That's fantastic.
Okay, let me just show my screen. Can you see that?
Hi Debbie, this is Moita. I'm afraid it's still stuck. So maybe if you can proceed without the presentation. Yes, I'm afraid so.
Is it stuck? Okay. Yes, I can give you a verbal presentation. Unfortunately, you won't see the photos. I'm busy downloading it onto Dropbox for you, but it's going to take another 10 minutes. So I'll just give you the presentation. Unfortunately, you won't see the nice photos though.
That's great. And we can always, we will always make the presentation available later, so everyone will be able to see it later.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I'll just go through the presentation. Okay, so the spread of invasive alien species has a far-reaching impact on the global environment and the economy. In South Africa, we have legislation. One of our pieces of legislation governing invasive alien species is the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act. And currently we have 143 prohibited invertebrates listed with 20 listed invasive species. 108 prohibited fish species with 20 listed, 16 mammals, 23 reptiles, and 38 bird species. The Mediterranean mussel is also one of the invasive species currently in South Africa, and it is a threat to our biodiversity. It also threatens our food security, health, and it has an impact on our economic development. One of our bird species or avian species that is a huge problem in South Africa is the Indian house crow, as Louise has suggested. We have 3 projects in the country currently on the house crow. One is in the city of Cape Town, but the other 2 are in eThekwini municipality, which is in Durban, up at the north coast of the country, as well as in Isikaweni, which is just outside Richards Bay. The birds in the Durban area was when they were started out there were around 4,000 to 5,000 birds. Currently, at the last spotting, there were four or five birds, which are the last couple that we're still trying to get to. And the eThekwini or the Richards Bay infestation is currently at around 7 birds. And Louise has already discussed the Cape Town infestations. We have service providers or implementing agents that do most of our invasive species control work due to the lack of capacity within the government departments. We have 1 mammal species project currently, which is feral pigs up in the Cedarburg in the Western Cape. That covers 3 projects, which is also a stakeholder participation project where we have a project with Cape Nature, which is one of our conservation organizations in the country, as well as stakeholders where we have organized hunting that actually do the management or control or eradication of the feral pigs on our behalf, and the Cape Nature or the conservation organizations do the monitoring and advocacy around that. We have 3 fish projects in the country with invasive fish, everything from the sharp-toothed catfish to tilapia species. The 3 projects is in the Rondegat River in the Cedarburg in the Western Cape, and we also have a project in the Eastern Cape in the Darlington Dam, and that is a sharp-toothed catfish project where we have a rural community that is harvesting the fish on a subsistence basis, and that is a food security project that we're running in the Eastern Cape. We have 1 amphibian species project, which is being managed by the City of Cape Town, which is the guttural toad, and 2 invertebrate species projects, invasive earthworms, which the research is still being done, so it's not at an implementation stage yet, in KwaZulu-Natal and in the Western Cape, and an invasive wasp species, the same invasive wasp species that was discussed earlier on in the presentations, a Vespa species that is highly invasive in the Western Cape. So out of the 5 categories in the country of invasive alien species, animal species, we're only covering 3. Unfortunately, we have a limited budget, so that's a little bit of a problem at this current stage. What we have done to get more stakeholder participation within the program is to initiate a national forum, which started out as a problem bird forum, but is now a national invasive animal forum, where we can get stakeholder participation and specialist input into the programs that the government or the department is currently facing, so that we can get the biggest bang for our buck. So we put our budget towards the most needy or the projects that have been prioritized, and then the implementation of containment, eradication, and management plans, the prioritization of the invasive alien species according to their groupings and in relation to our national priorities according to the NEMBA regulations, and then identification of the species that we're needing to control. What we're looking at which is a big problem at the moment is the introduction of freshwater fish, which is the majority of the introductions currently is species in the families of the carp, bass and trout. Our native fish are vulnerable to predation of the major predatory fish such as the bass, and there have been numerous illegal introductions of freshwater fish in the country. What we're also having problems with at the moment is of the Australian red claw crayfish, which is considered invasive in the country, and there are established feral populations within South Africa. And our concern is that it is a popular aquarium species which is very tolerant of environmental changes, and it has escaped into some of our systems in our Limpopo province, which is our most northern province in the country. So there is implications with regard to our SADC and NEPAD agreements with our neighboring countries. Marine species is our potential gap at the moment. We don't currently have any marine species projects in the country, although we are very aware of the 80 confirmed species that are invasive on our coasts. Mostly our west coast is dominated by invasive species, but they are restricted to lagoons and harbors currently. And the most important species are the vase tunicates and mussel farms in the Western Cape and on the west coast, and also found in marinas on the west coast. And the most important species is the European shore crab, which is found in the Cape Peninsula harbors. The Pacific barnacle, mostly on the west coast in the upper intertidal areas. The Mediterranean mussel, as I've already said, which is on the west coast and the south coast, highly invasive in the intertidal areas. And the bisexual mussel on the west coast. Mediterranean invasions have a direct economic benefit, but have harsh and environmental impact. So this is a weighing off of the costs, as our rural communities do make a subsistence existence off the Mediterranean mussel invasions off the west coast. So our potential gap at the moment as well is microbe species, and the pests and diseases linked to the agricultural products coming into the country at the moment. The biggest concern as well is extralimital species such as our Orange River mudfish, which is endemic to the Fish River and the Sunday, which is endemic to the Orange River, which is in the northern parts of the Northern Cape, but is now invading the Fish and Sundays River, which is further south in the country, and the banded tilapia, which is moving from the northern areas where it is endemic down into the southern areas. And then the use of proper prioritization tools to establish the impact of the species in those areas. And the prevention is better than cure. We do have a newly established biosecurity department or division, directorate within the Department of Environmental Affairs, which will be looking at most of the invasive alien species coming across our borders, and how we will be able to control the movement of species into the country and then within the country from extralimital species to the different areas. Our priorities will be the biosecurity policy and procedures and the alignment to the human health problems associated with invasive alien species, and to prioritize species that are already in the country. And then imports of species must go through the risk assessments before being considered for import. Trade and industry play an important role here. And that is all I have to say. Thank you. Hello?
Thank you so much, Debbie, for your interesting story. Thank you very much. I would like to see if we can still connect again with Sarah Brunel. At the moment, I can't see her in our list of speakers anymore.
Hi, Chantal, it's Moita. I think she's trying to connect, so maybe she can join a bit later when the discussion starts.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, in that case, I will continue then with the next point on our agenda, which is a brief update from my side on the forthcoming EU legislation on invasive alien species. At the moment, the European Union is in the process of developing a legislative instrument on invasive alien species, which is due to be adopted this year. ICN is very supportive of this initiative, as it is essential for preventing and controlling the introduction of the most harmful invasive species, and also to ensure the early detection, response and containment and management. And this is also an effective way to work alongside the European and also international targets. So the European Biodiversity Strategy to 2020 has a specific target focused on invasive alien species, and so does the Convention on Biological Diversity IG targets. So what has happened so far is there have been consultations of citizens and stakeholders in 2008 and 2012, which looked into policy options for an EU strategy on invasive alien species, and also consisted of an assessment of existing policies in the different EU member states and a selected number of OECD countries. In addition, there has been an assessment of costs of the EU action on this type of policy to minimize the negative effects of invasive species on biodiversity in Europe. And it is now close. This instrument is now close to be adopted, and it will aim to strengthen the coordinated action across Europe. So I think I'll leave it at this for now, and if Sarah is not able to join us now, I would really like to give the chance to all of the participants to ask their questions to the different speakers, and also to provide their ideas and responses for having an exchange with the group who is here today. So if someone wants to ask a question, that's possible with the little hand icon, which I think is in your dashboard. You can also type in a question in the chat box, and then we can address it to either one of the speakers or the audience in general. So are there any questions?
I believe we have some questions from the early on. Maybe let me just forward them to you. Might be easier.
Thank you. I think I can see a question here which is about the sharing of presentations at a later stage. I believe you mentioned that already, Moika, that these presentations from all the speakers will be available to all of the participants afterwards.
Yes, perhaps I can intervene here, Chantal. The presentations will, with the permission of the presenters, be uploaded onto the ICLEI Cities Biodiversity Center website, which is www.iclei.org/biodiversity. Additionally, when the URBIS website is finalized, it's due for launch really anytime in the coming days. We will also store them there. Chantal, I see that there are some questions posted earlier in the panel, just by text. If you see the list of questions, someone has asked, for example, whether the spread of invasives is from urban areas to semi-urban or vice versa. So I think maybe that's perhaps a more obvious one, which has been addressed by some of the presentations, but there are others in the text. Also, just to clarify, if any of the participants would like to speak or share some of their own experiences with regards to invasive alien species in urban landscapes, now is a good opportunity, and I think if you have a microphone available, you could even discuss that. There should be a little hand icon available which you can click on to indicate you would like speaking rights. Okay. Okay, Chantal, it seems that there is nobody forthcoming to ask questions. So,
Okay.
at least I don't see any. Perhaps more so you can clarify, but I don't see any hands up in the air at the moment. But so maybe we can revert to this list of questions which have been posted into the box, into the panel. Do you have them available to you?
I must say it's a bit difficult for me to read them. I'm trying here.
Chantal, I also posted them in the chat box. It might be easier for you to read. Because it seems that
Okay.
everyone is shy today, so everyone is just typing in. No one wants the floor to speak.
Oh, okay. I'm trying now to see the chat
Well,
box.
there's one question here from Akshat Kumar Banerjee, who is asking whether the fact that urban areas tend to be highly disturbed bears any relation to their propensity to spread invasives, or for the spread of invasives within urban areas. And that's something that we can perhaps address as a group. And also, yeah, there's a few technical questions here. Okay. Well, Chantal, I don't know how you feel about this, but if no questions are forthcoming, sorry.
Can I answer? Can I intervene? This is Piero.
Oh, Piero, please.
Because I tried to click on the hand, but nothing happened. So I don't know how I should ask for the floor. So I decided to open my microphone and try in this way. Now, I think that the point just made. So what is the role? I mean, cities are indeed a very disturbed environment. So you know, there is this hypothesis that invasions tend to happen in disturbed environments more easily than in natural environments. I think that we should be aware. We should be aware that I think that is part of the pattern, but that we have many examples of invasive species that enter first into towns or cities because the pathway arrives there, but then they expand to natural, semi-natural, or really very, very natural environments elsewhere. For example, in freshwater, we see a very direct correlation between the quality of the environment and the number of invasives. So there are environments, you know, freshwater really facilitates invasion and spread. So I think that in that specific environment, invasive species arrive to towns or to disturbed areas, but then they rapidly expand to non-disturbed areas. If we think of marine species, in the Mediterranean we have, for example, the very famous Caulerpa taxifolia. It was initially released in front of an aquarium, but after that, in a few years, it has expanded to many protected areas of the entire basin of the Mediterranean. So I think it depends, of course, on the organisms, but we shouldn't rely too much on the issue that an invasive species is remains confined to a disturbed environment and does not expand farther to more natural areas.
Thanks a lot, Piero, for this clarification.
I think, may I comment? Joe Caffrey here.
Absolutely. Please go ahead,
Hello?
Joe.
Hello. Yeah, you just basically follow on from what Piero said there. Particularly in disturbed habitats or in wasteland habitats, as we have in many cities, invasive species generally goes on unmanaged simply because it is a wasteland. So an inoculum is built up and a reserve is built up that can very readily spread and will very readily spread out of that. It can happen through canals, through rivers, but also through roadways or railway systems. Invasive species will proliferate more commonly in disturbed areas and move from those into less disturbed areas.
Thanks, Joe. I can see here another question from Debbie on how other countries deal with the economic aspects related to invasive alien species, if they have economic benefits. Does any of the speakers or participants want to react to that?
If no one else is, I can again comment on it. Is there anybody else that wants to take the floor? This is Piero again.
I think it's okay, Piero, if you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Sorry for talking so much. But no, I think this is an important point. I mean, especially in cities, but everywhere we rely on invasive species, so they do bring a lot of benefits. I mean, if we think of the agriculture, the crop species or ornamental species that we all use, of course there is an added value in using in many of our activities introduced species. However, when we focus on those species that cause problems, this is what we define for invasive species, then at the end, in general, it is very difficult to see an overall benefit, and in general, problems tend to accumulate and to increase over time. So I think that in general, it is much more convenient to try to work on prevention and use native substitutes wherever possible, so not to take the risk of introducing new species that may be beneficial on a specific sector but may bring costs and problems in many other sectors. But that's the area where I think Sarah can help us understanding if she can intervene, because that underlines the need for doing for basing our decisions of the use of new species on an analysis of the risk, and that is an area where the EPO has a particularly long experience.
Thank you very much, Piero. Unfortunately, Sarah just sends a message that it seems difficult for her to reconnect again, so I'm afraid we won't be able to hear the rest of her interesting story. But I will make sure that yeah, the information she wanted to share with us can still be sent to all of you, of course with her permission. I'm not sure at the moment if there are other open questions.
I think, Chantal, there are some more. So if you can see the questions menu, there is a little icon on the right, on the right, where you can undock the questions to expand them. Yes.
Okay.
And there are some really interesting questions from Jorge and Jane in the end. You will see.
Just is a very small screen here. I don't know how to make it larger. Would you mind reading them?
No, not at all. So one question would be from Jorge Orhueta. He's saying that he missed part of the discussion, so he's not sure if it was mentioned. But he says, I think that something that worries many townships is the issue of stray or feral cats, which also pose a problem with humans that feed them. And the same could go with the pigeons. This would be in places where they're not native.
Okay, thank you very much. So is someone in the panel of speakers able to answer this question?
I would again be happy to reply if possible, but if others want to be more active, I don't know. Again, Piero.
Yeah, I can't see who is willing to respond at this moment, but yeah, I can only say to those who want to respond, yeah, you can unmute your microphone and let us know. Otherwise, Piero, please, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's just a technical issue, because I think the tools seem very interesting, but we probably all need to learn more on how to use it. I didn't see the question before. No, the problem raised by Jorge on the impact of ERCAT, I think is extremely important. I wanted to mention it in my talk, but then I decided it was too much already on the ground. We have had many studies in recent years showing the tremendous impact of domestic cats on biodiversity. They have been shown to be the primary cause of mortality for birds in North America, let's say non-natural mortality. It is the first species impacting on IUCN red listed species of animals. It is one of the major impacts by introduced species on migratory species. This is another work we are doing for the conventional migratory species. So it is indeed a problem. The impact is on many vertebrates, from birds to bats to reptiles, lizards, and so on. The issue is that, and I think it's important what Sarah said about the need to have a communication strategy, an effective communication strategy, and other speakers say. We need to find ways to inform the public on this kind of impact and to find ways to improve the collaboration of the public for reducing these kinds of impacts. So that's an area where, of course, the social perception is crucial. So it is just impossible, I think, to ban the use of cats. We need to work with people and to explain to dog owners, to cat owners, to pet owners, the risks related to the presence of pets, and this is an area where communication is crucial.
Thank you very much. I'm looking now as well at the clock, as I think this session is supposed to last till 5:30. I'm not sure if we still have urgent questions to address. If not, I would suggest that we collect still pending questions and come back to the audience. Yeah, just checking in with you, colleagues of ICLEI. Yeah, is it okay if we then come to an end of this session now?
Absolutely, Chantal. And just from our side in ICLEI, just to say thank you so much to all the panelists for sharing such excellent presentations, and I think it gave us a really good insight into what's actually happening on the ground in these cities, and also some of the key challenges that they're facing. And also to yourself, Chantal, thanks so much for organizing and facilitating this. It was a great, it was very interesting for all of us. And just to reiterate, we will of course be uploading the presentations on iclei.org/biodiversity in the coming days. So thank you all for your efforts. And if there are any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact either the speakers bilaterally or indeed just send an email to cbc@iclei.org, and we can hopefully address it in the coming days. So thank you, Chantal, and all the speakers.
Thanks a lot, Russell. Thanks to ICLEI for making this webinar possible, and yeah, I look forward to a continuation of this dialogue and exchange, and I'll make sure that all of you will remain informed of the conference that IUCN will be organizing in September on this same topic. So I wish you all a wonderful evening.
So, sorry, Chantal, just to add, we will have all the email addresses of the participants, so we can also send them a follow-up link to the conference that you are organizing on the 5th of September, as well as the link to the web page that will have the presentations. So thanks.
That's excellent. Thanks so much. And goodbye to everyone.